Letter Abraham Van Helsing to Dr. Seward, 2nd of September. My good friend, when I have received your letter I am already coming to you. By good fortune I can leave just at once, without wrong to any of those who have trusted me. Were fortune together, then it were bad for those who have trusted, for I come to my friend when he call me, to aid those he holds dear. Tell your friend that when the time you suck from my wound so swiftly the poison of the gangrene from that knife that our other friend, too nervous, let slip, you did more for him than he wants my aids, and you call for them than all this great fortune could do. But it is pleasure added to do for him, your friend. It is to you that I come. Have then rooms for me at the Great Eastern Hotel, so that I may be near at hand. And please, it's so arranged that we may see the young lady not too late on tomorrow, for it is likely that I may have to return here that night. But if I need, I shall come again in 3 days, and stay longer if I must. Till then, good-bye, my friend John. Van Helsing. Letter, Dr. Seward to Honourable Arthur Holmwood, 3rd of September. My dear Art, Van Helsing is come and gone. He came on with me Gillingham, and found that, by Lucy's discretion, her mother was lunching out, so that we were alone with her. Van Helsing made a very careful examination of the patient. He is to report to me, and I shall advise you, for of course I was not all present at the time. He is, I fear, much concerned, but he says he must think. When I told him of our friendship, and how you trust me in the matter, he said, you must tell him all you think. Tell him what I think, if you can guess it, if you will. Nay, I am not jesting. That is no jest, but life and death, perhaps more. I asked what he meant by that, for he was very serious. This was when we had come back to town, and he was having a cup of tea before starting on his return to Amsterdam. He would not give me any further clue. You must not be angry with him, Art, because his very reticence means that all his brains are working for her good. He will speak plainly enough when the time comes, be sure, so I told him I would simply write an account of our visit, just as if I were doing a descriptive special article for the Daily Telegraph. He seemed not to notice, but remarked that the smuts in London were not quite so bad as they used to be when he was a student here. I am to get his report tomorrow if he can possibly make it. In any case, I am to have a letter. Well, as to the visit, Lucy was more cheerful on the day I first saw her. It certainly looked better. She has lost something of the ghostly look that so upset you, and her breathing was normal. She was very sweet to the Professor, as she always is, and tried to make him feel at ease, though I could see that the poor girl was making a hard struggle for it. I believe Van Helsing saw it, too, for I saw the quick look under his bushy brows that I knew of old. Then he began to chat of all things except ourselves and diseases, and with such an infinite geniality that I could see poor Lucy's pretence of animation merge into reality. Then, without any seeming change, he brought the conversation gently round to his visit, and suavely said, My dear young miss, I have so great the pleasure because you are much beloved. That is much, my dear, even were that which I do not see. They told me you were in the spirit, and that you were of a ghastly pale. To them I say, poof! And he snapped his fingers at me and went on. But you and I shall show them how wrong they are. How can he, and he pointed at me with the same look and gesture as that which once he pointed me out to his class on, or rather after, a particular occasion which he never fails to remind me of, know anything of a young lady's? He has his madmans to play with, and to bring them back to happiness, and to those who love them. It is much to do, and, oh, but there are rewards in that we can bestow such happiness. But the young ladies, he has no wife nor daughter, and the young do not tell themselves to the young, but to the old, like me, who have known so many sorrows and the causes of them. So, my dear, we will send him away to smoke the cigarette in the garden, whilst you and I will have a talk all to ourselves. I took the hint and strolled about, and presently the Professor came to the window and called me in. He looked grave, but said, I have made careful examination, but there is no functional cause. With you I agree that there is much blood lost, and has been, but is not. But the conditions of her are in no way anemic. I have asked her to send me her maid, that I may ask just 1 or 2 questions, but so I may not chance to miss nothing. I know well what she will say, and yet there is always cause for everything. I must go back home and think. You must send me to the telegram every day, and if there be cause I shall come again. The disease, for not to be all well is a disease, interests me, and the sweet young dear, she interests me too. She charm me, and for her, if not for you or disease, I come. As I tell you, he would not say a word more, even when we were alone, and so now, Art, you know all I know. I shall keep a stern watch. I trust your poor father is rallying. It must be a terrible thing to you, my dear old fellow, to be placed in such a position between two people who are both so dear to you. I know your idea of duty to your father, and you are right to stick to it, but if need be I shall send you word to come at once to Lucy, so do not be over anxious unless you hear from me. Dr. Seward's Diary, 4th of September. Zoophagus patient still keeps up our interest in him. He has only one outburst, and that was yesterday at an unusual time. Just before the stroke of noon, he began to go restless. The attendant knew the symptoms and at once summoned aid. Fortunately the man came at a run, and were just in time, for at the stroke of noon he became so violent it took all their strength to hold him. In about 5 minutes, however, he began to get more and more quiet, and finally sank into a sort of melancholy, in which state he has remained up to now. The attendant tells me that his screams, whilst in the paroxysm, were really appalling. I found my hands full when I got in, attending to some of the other patients who were frightened by him. Indeed, I can quite understand the effect, for the sounds disturb even me, though I was some distance away. It is now after the dinner hour of the asylum, and as yet my patient sits in a corner brooding, with a dull, sullen, woebegone look in his face, which seems rather to indicate than to show something directly. I cannot quite understand it. Later. Another change in my patient. At 5 o'clock I looked in on him, and found him seemingly as happy and contented as he used to be. He was catching flies and eating them, and was keeping note of his capture by making nail marks on the edge of the door between the ridges of padding. When he saw me, he came over and apologized for his bad conduct, and asked me in a very humble, cringing way to be let back into his own room, and to have his notebook again. I thought it well to humour him, so he is back in his room, with the window open. He has the sugar of his tea spread out on the window-sill, and is reaping quite a harvest of flies. He is not now eating them, but putting them in a box, as of old, and is already examining the corner of his room to find a spider. I tried to get him to talk about the past few days, for any clue of his thoughts would be immense help to me, but he would not rise. For a moment or two he looked very sad, and said in a sort of far-away voice, as though saying it rather to himself than to me, all over, he's deserted me. No hope for me now unless I do it for myself. Then, suddenly turning to me in a resolute way, he said, Doctor, won't you be very good to me and let me have a little more sugar? I think it would be good for me. And the flies, I said. Yes, the flies like it too, and I like the flies, therefore I like it. And there are people who know so little as to think that madmen do not argue. I procured him a double supply and left him as happy a man as I suppose in any of the world. I wish I could fathom his mind. Midnight. Another change in him. I had been to see Miss Westenra, whom I found much better and had just returned, and was standing on our own gate looking at the sunset, when once more I heard him yelling. As his room was on the side of the house, I could hear it better than in the morning. It was a shock to me to turn from the wonderful smoky beauty of a sunset over London, with its lurid lights and inky shadows and all the marvellous tints that come on foul clouds even as on foul weather, and to realize all the grim sternness of my own cold stone building, with its wealth of breathing misery, and my own desolate heart to endure it all. I reached him as the sun was going down, and from his window saw the red disk sink. As it sank he became less and less frenzied, and just as it dipped he slid from the hands that held him, an inert mass on the floor. It is wonderful, however, what intellectual recuperative power lunatics have, for within a few minutes he stood up quite calmly, and looked around him. I signalled to the attendants not to hold him, for I was anxious to see what he would do. He went straight over to the window and brushed out the crumbs of sugar. Then he took his fly-box and emptied it outside, and threw away the box. Then he shut the window, and crossing over, sat down on his bed. All this surprised me, so I asked him, Are you not going to keep flies any more? No, he said. I am sick of all that rubbish. He certainly is a wonderfully interesting study. I wish I could get some glimpse of his mind or the cause of his sudden passion. Stop. There may be a clue after all, if we can find a way Today his paroxysms came on at high noon and at sunset. Can it be that there is a malign influence of the sun at periods which affects certain natures, as at times the moon does others? We shall see. Telegram, Seward, London to Van Helsing, Amsterdam, 4th of September. Patient still better today. Telegram, Seward, London to Van Helsing, Amsterdam, 5th of September. Patient greatly improved, good appetite, sleeps naturally, good spirits, colour coming back. Telegram, Seward, London to Van Helsing, Amsterdam, 6th of September. Terrible change for the worse. Come at once, do not lose an hour. I hold over telegram to Holmwood till have seen you.